but we're also a failing economy. We're going to have a crash, and we're going to have a crash like a 1929 crash if she gets in. You saw a gentleman yesterday who got up, one of the top analysts in the world, frankly, and said that if Trump isn't elected, he predicts, and he's predicting you have a stock market crash like 1929. Agonize. And these are animals. Well, we have to put them in jail.
Only to be a fly on the wall in the Fox News broadcast booth, as someone pointed out, maybe not the best idea for them to be showing the Dow over 40,000 and up 500 points for the day, while Trump is lying and trashing the economy. And so they decided to remove it mid-speech. I mean, how shameless can you get?
She's been unbelievable in terms of her badness to some of our allies, some of our great allies. You know who I'm talking about? Here is the record of economic calamity that Kamala is desperate for voters to ignore.
It seems that with every new poll that shows Kamala Harris surging ahead, Trump thinks that the best way to stop the hemorrhaging is to hold another emergency presser where he lies and spews disinformation for an hour straight. Same thing that many moderate voters are noting as the reason why they're turning away from him. So go ahead, Donnie, keep doing it.
Very angry at her. I think I'm entitled to personal attacks. I don't have a lot of respect for her. I don't have a lot of respect for her intelligence. And I think she'll be a terrible president. And I think it's very important that we win. And whether the personal attacks are good, bad, I mean, she certainly attacks me personally. She actually called me weird. He's weird. It was just a soundbite. And she called JD and I weird. He's not weird. He was a great student at Yale. He went to Ohio State.
While CNN and Fox News decided to broadcast it live, CNN ultimately cutting away at the top of the hour.
And we did very well in 2016, and we did much better.
All right, we're going to continue to monitor this news conference. Trump at his golf club in New Jersey, in Bedminster, New Jersey. Lots to discuss, to assess right now. Kristen Holmes.
MSNBC did not. However, it's with Fox News that users on X pointed out as Trump was seething over the economy, an economy, by the way, that is showing record-breaking job numbers, lowest inflation since the spring of 2021, and a soaring stock market. Fox News decided it was best to hide the ticker, showing this uptick in the Dow in the middle of the segment.
Agonize. And these are animals, and we have to get them out of our country, or we have to put them in jail because we don't want.
This is Donald Trump in campaign mode, and that's what Democrats want to see. They want to see someone who is up there and is going to be bragging about crowd size and saying that he had a bigger crowd than Martin Luther King Jr. So it's not actually the best day, though, for him to be doing this, because the inflation report was a good one. So we're under 3% for the first time since March 2021. It's 15 months that we've seen wage growth go over the inflation rate, which is what everyone wants to see. There was a report out that our U.S. Crude oil production is now 13.4 million barrels a day. So we're outpacing 35% ahead of Russia, 38% ahead of Saudi Arabia. And what we're seeing in the surveys about this, like in Michigan, for instance, there was a FT and the Ross School of Business did a poll together of voters there, and they actually rated Kamala Harris as more trustworthy on the economy than Donald Trump. It was just 42 to 41, but she was trailing double digits, sometimes over 20 points behind him. So the American public is seeing a change here. They are seeing inflation cool. It's not done. 100% it's not done. But it is moving in the right direction, and that's why you're seeing such a surge for Kamala.
Now, there's much debate, right, as to how one should cover these ramblings. Some think it best to not cover them at all. Some fact check after the fact, and some just allow Trump to dig his own hole. As I've said on previous videos, right, to me, not covering them is dangerous. Instead, covering them with real in-time fact checks, if one can keep up with all the lies, is the way to go.
To fact check there, so we're just going to run through things here. He said that Kamala Harris is not in favor of giving Israel weapons. She made it very clear, her campaign did this morning, that she is not in favor of an arms embargo of Israel. He said that no one died on January 6th. People were killed. We know that. Ashley Babbitt, 3 others died from medical emergencies. One officer died immediately after having been pepper sprayed in the day following. There were 4 officers who died of suicide in the months after. He talked about how there's a constitutional issue for how Kamala Harris was chosen by the Democratic Party. That's not true. The Constitution doesn't govern how the party selects its candidates. He also talked about the border. He said 20 million people over the border. That's grossly exaggerated. He could have just gone with the actual number. It's not a great number. He chose 20 million. But actually, crossings are down for the last 4 months, the lowest they've been in 3 years since the president signed his executive order. He certainly did not mention that. That is not the picture that he painted. And he also said that in Afghanistan, there had been no deaths in the 18 months before the withdrawal, that no one was even shot at. Well, tell that to the service members who were wounded.
I'm not saying fact checks after the diatribe had stopped aren't effective. I mean, I'll tune into Fox News 5 just to see their co-host's face as Jessica Tarlov provides some desperately needed context.
By contrast, I'm going to keep the Affordable Care Act unless we can do something much better. We'll keep it. It stinks. It's not good. If we can do something better, we're going to do something with it. If we can do better, meaning less expensive and better health care for you.
If it's trending in her direction, which I believe that it is, maybe it ends up better. But Donald Trump has been, for instance, saying that he's going to introduce a big, beautiful health care plan. And there are no specifics on it. And Kamala is being held to a standard where she has to tell you the nuts and bolts of things, where people are saying, you tell us exactly that. She's supposed to talk about her economic plan on Friday. The press is already saying it'll be, quote, light on detail. They don't know. Could it be as light as big and beautiful? I doubt it.
Are you actually arguing that Donald Trump is held to a lower standard than Kamala Harris?
Yeah, actually I am. If you could say, I'm going to get rid of Obamacare and I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do, then that is the lowest standard of all time.
But the reality is, this is Trump in campaign mode. He's afraid and projecting. So he's going to continue to do this. It's his only strategy. So we can't get complacent, but remain diligent in our efforts, not to remind those who somehow still take his word at face value. I think that ship may have sailed, but those voters disinterested in voting at all, which the Harris-Walz ticket has proven to be more effective in reaching.
All right, every day here on CNN's flagship morning show, we are trying to lay out deep insight in the major historic shifts in this election. CNN senior data reporter Harry Etten is here with what might be, or up until this point, was one of the key, if not the key voting bloc in this election, the so-called double haters, people who didn't like either Donald Trump or President Biden. What's happening with them?
Yeah, all right. So let's take a look at double haters. As you pointed out, these are folks who dislike Joe Biden as well as Donald Trump. And I want you to look at their voting patterns, who they want for president. Now, let's go back to June. What we saw was 28% of those folks were going for Joe Biden compared to 19% who said they were going for Donald Trump. Now that Kamala Harris is the Democratic nominee, look at her support among them. Look at this. 53% say Kamala Harris. Look at that jump. That's a jump of 25 points. Donald Trump has gone in the other direction, down to 11 points. And now we're looking at, what is that, John? That is a 42-point advantage among the folks who dislike Joe Biden and Donald Trump for Kamala Harris compared to just that 9-point advantage that Joe Biden had back in June. This, of course, is a substantial portion of the electorate. Before Kamala Harris got in, this was going to be the group that was going to determine one way or another, and it may still be. And if it is, Kamala Harris has this massive advantage over this very key bloc in the electorate.
I just want to point out, again, what we have seen in the last few weeks are these big shifts in polling you don't normally see. Right now, at least. But that's a giant increase in no time.
That is a jump.
Simply showcasing that a non-vote could be a vote for this.
Kamala, you're fired. Get out of here. Go. Get out of here. All said I was wrong when I said that migrant crime will reach epidemic proportions. And now it's much worse than that. It's a lot worse than epidemic proportions. It's beyond control. We have a new category of crime. It's called migrant crime. And I think it's going to end up being the worst category of all.
All right, Steve, what does the data show?
Well, it was supposed to be an economic speech, but he can't help himself, and he has to get off into things like migrants and immigration and the border and crime and all that kind of stuff. But once again, the facts are not quite what he said. First, let's just talk about crime in general. He likes to think the country's in the middle of some crime wave. That is actually not true. Violent crime per 100,000 people has dropped 26% under Joe Biden, from an average of 398 per 100,000 people down to 294. What is even more amazing is that it in fact ended Trump's administration slightly higher than when it began, or certainly at best, most favorably. You can't see any improvement under Trump's administration. All the improvement has been under the Biden administration. Now, there's the fallacy of migrant crime. If you read the New York Post, you'd think, of course, all crime was committed by migrants. But in fact, and we've talked about this, I think, before, but it's really quite dramatic. If you look at if you break crime down between native-born Americans, documented immigrants, and undocumented immigrants, you can see that native-born American crime rate is actually higher than it is for documented immigrants and way higher than it is for undocumented immigrants. That's true whether you look at violent crime, whether you look at property crime, when you look at drug violations. The fact is, immigrants actually commit fewer crimes than Americans. And for the undocumented immigrants, it's not totally surprising. They don't want to get sent back to wherever they came from, so they tend to behave themselves better than a lot of Americans and a lot of documented immigrants. So this is a complete fiction that Donald Trump has created.
Real quick, Meta just changed their algorithm to suppress political content. Please follow our Instagram at MeidasTouch right now as we head towards 400,000 followers so you don't miss a beat.